Hello everybody, my name is Hope and welcome back to my channel. I like musicals, they're a big part of my life, and today we're going to be talking about Les Misérables. Now I did one of these videos a little while ago when I was talking about Sweeney Todd by the master that is Stephen Sondheim, but I thought today I would steer away from Stephen, although I still love you, and talk about another huge show, which I've already said the name of, Les Misérables. Now I would argue that Les Misérables is one of the biggest musicals ever. It has ran on Broadway for many years, toured, West End, you name it, it's been there, it's done that. It's massive. Even people who don't know musicals know about Les Misérables. They know I Dreamed a Dream, whether it be from Susan Boyle or not. They know Bring Him Home. They've heard it on Britain's Got Talent. They've heard it from somewhere, you know? And honestly, what an iconic show it is. It gets a lot of hate nowadays, I notice. Everyone's like, it's overrated, nobody cares about it, whatever. Well, I care about it. So that's why I'm talking about it today. As always, we're going to go through the entire plot, but I'm also going to add some little tidbits of information if I have them, which I probably don't, but we'll find out if I do, if they come from my noggin. And I don't think I've ever said the word noggin out loud, and I probably never will again. But anyway, let's get into it. So, Les Mis is written by Boubel and Schonberg. Whether that's actually how I pronounce their names is another question, because they're both French. And today was the day I found out that Boubel is actually spelled B-O-U-B-L-I-L, and not B-O-U-B-I-L, like I thought it was. Kretzmer also wrote the lyrics, and he never gets spoken about, so sucks to be him, I guess. But the show was produced by Cameron Mackintosh in 1980. The show is almost 55 years old. I've done that maths wrong, haven't I? 1980, which means 20 years is 2000, which means 40 years is 2020, so 44, yes, I can't do maths. It's been 44 years, almost 45, which is basically 50 years. So it's almost 50 years old. And it actually premiered in Paris, which I didn't know, but again, makes a lot of sense because it was written by French people and it's about France. I like on the wiki also, usually when there's like a musical, it names like all the productions that there's been, like it'll be like Berlin 1994 and then like UK tour in 2000 or whatever. This just says multiple productions since 1985. There's been a lot of them, as we know. It also won the Tony Award for Best Musical. Are we surprised? No, we're not. But what I think is bizarre about the show is that everybody thinks it's about the French Revolution. It is not. It is about this random 3-day long revolution, I think is a strong word. Riot might be a better one. Battle, small battle between the police and these rebels. I really don't know how to describe it. I don't think I've ever had to describe it before. It's also about a dude who stole some bread and has been on the run from this policeman who just cannot seem to let it go. Also about that too. And it's a love story. A lot of things going on. But when it first opened, everybody hated it. They thought it was crap. But oh, how times have changed. But let me just get into the plot because I feel like that's what you're here for. So, it's 1815 and it's France. And there is a dude called Jean Valjean, aka Jean Valjean, aka Hugh Jackman, who is one among many, many hundreds of prisoners in a French prison. Jean Valjean is getting out of prison after 19 years for, and I think we all know this, stealing a loaf of bread. Now, is this a large sentence? Yes. But he actually only got 5 years for stealing the loaf of bread. He got the other 14 years for trying to run away. Now, do I think he should have got 5 years for stealing a loaf of bread? No. He explains his sister was almost dead, and so was his niece, and he was just doing what was best for the family. But obviously the law doesn't really care about that. Sucks to be you if you're poor. Let's be honest. But he is prisoner 24601, don't let anybody forget it, and he is released by the prison guard Javert, aka Javert, aka Russell Crowe. And I do not care what people say, I like Russell Crowe in the Les Mis film, and honestly, I think he's one of the better ones in it. So there, I've said it. And basically, Jean Valjean goes on parole, which is this like yellow ticket, which he has to show, but also means that he's going to struggle to get a job because everyone knows that he's an ex-convict, even though literally all he did was steal a loaf of bread and run away. So he leaves the prison, he goes on his merry way. No one's giving him a job because they're like, you're a convict and we can't trust you. And he's like, I literally stole a loaf of bread. Why is everyone keeping it so much? But nonetheless, he moves on and he finds this church. I think it's a church. And the bishop there lets him in and he's like, have some food, have a roof over your head, because he's religious and he kind of has to do that. But Jean Valjean has literally just got out of prison and he knows that he's never going to work and he's panicking, essentially. So he steals all of the silver from the church. Now, this is a big mistake from Jean Valjean, as we can tell. Literally just got out of prison and is already committing more crimes. But nonetheless, he runs away and he gets caught because he's an idiot at this point in time and hasn't got too good at running away yet. Honestly, I realise now that this show is pretty much just Jean Valjean running away the movie, because at the beginning he's rubbish at it and by the end he gets really, really good. But yeah, he gets caught and he gets taken back, and the bishop, instead of being like, yeah, he stole it, he's like, no, I gave it to him and stuff, and he's like, take it and make a good life for yourself. And Jean Valjean's like, okay, my new lease on life starts right now and I am actually going to change. And he does, which is great. And honestly, this is like the main first turning point for Jean Valjean, because the priest is like, become an honest man, and Jean Valjean's like, oh, now I feel really guilty for committing that crime against you, because all you were just nice to me and I wasn't very nice back to you. But he tears up his parole. He's like, I ain't going back to parole no more. I'm living my best life with this silver that I'm going to sell. I'm going to make loads of money and I'm going to live my best life. But obviously now, because he's torn it up and it means that he's not going to go back to his parole officer, he is a wanted man once again because he's broken his parole, which means that you go back to prison. Sure. Following on, it's 8 years later. I was going to say 2023. It is not 2023, it's 1823. And Jean Valjean has a new identity. He's not called Jean Valjean anymore. He's not Jean Valjean. He's Monsieur Madeleine. Honestly, in the movie, I always thought his name was Monsieur le Maire, because that's what they say. But according to Wikipedia, it's Monsieur Madeleine. And further reading the sentence on Wikipedia, because I do know the plot, but I will forget things. So he's a factory owner, and he's also the mayor of Montreuil-sur-Mer. I did French for 8 years, can you tell? I also have the French copy of this book. Have I ever read it? No, because it's hard. I read a couple of pages. Do I have it on my bookshelf? Let me see. Here it is. Here is the French. To prove that it's in French, here's the blurb. I know it's probably backwards, but in French. I think I've read like a chapter and then I gave up because it was too hard and I'm not that good at French. I bet if I tried now it'd be better, but nonetheless. Moving on. So yes, Jean Valjean is now a factory owner and the mayor of this town in France. And one of the people that works in his factory, which he has like I was going to say a fashion factory. That's not the right word. Like they make clothes and stuff in his factory. And there's a woman there and her name is Fantine. And she is a single mother and she works at the factory to fund for her child, whose name is Cosette, to basically live. And Fantine does not live with Cosette. Cosette lives with this couple who we'll meet later because Fantine cannot provide for her, and also because she's at work she can't like look after her in the day and stuff. Anyway, the foreman, who is kind of like the leader of the factory, like he's like oversees everything, really fancies Fantine, but like he's gross, like he doesn't really care about her feelings, like he's really dodged, like he's not a good guy, but he really fancies Fantine. And she keeps rejecting his advances because he's gross. And when the foreman gets annoyed, everyone gets annoyed because he's like mean to everyone. And so that's why none of the factory girls like her. And basically one day, the day that we flash forward to in 1823, Fantine gets a letter from the innkeeper and his wife saying, Cosette's sick and needs more money, please send us more money. And she's like, oh no. But one of the other factory girls steals it and reads it and is like, oh my god, you've got a daughter and you're a single mother, which really isn't that deep, but apparently to them it is, because it proves that she's a slut, because they're all like, you sleep with so many men, which isn't obviously true, but that's how they take it, and so they're not very nice to her. And basically there's a big old fight, like hair pulling, punch facing, scary little fight. And Jean Valjean and the foreman break it up. Obviously the foreman finds out that Fantine has a child, which means that she's not this like innocent, pretty girl that he thought she was, even though literally nothing about her has changed whatsoever. If anything, she's cooler because she just got into a fight. But he's angry and all the girls are angry. And Jean Valjean is like, dude, you sorted out, this is your job, leave me alone. And because the foreman's angry and the girls are angry and everyone's freaking angry, she gets fired. Sad times for Fantine. Now, Fantine gets really, really sad about this, obviously, because A, to her knowledge, her child is sick and dying, and she's got no money and also no place to live or anything. Although, my main question is that in the film, and I think in the musical also, what I'm about to talk to you about all happens within the span of, I'm going to say, less than 48 hours. So these are the questions that I have. Number 1, where does Fantine go after work? You know? Because she doesn't go home. Once she gets fired, she starts wandering the streets of France and ends up becoming a prostitute. That is what happens to her, right? And I'm like, maybe you're paying nightly, I don't know. But like, some part of me is thinking, you probably have a house to go back to, even if you have no money. Or a room, at least. You have a room somewhere, surely. Number 2. Again, I understand that you are trying to save your daughter, but why the day you got fired, you sold your necklace, your hair, your teeth, and your body? Like, I understand impulsive decisions, but that just seemed a bit too impulsive for me. I understand that you were desperate, but what? Like, give yourself a day, man. Take a day to breathe. I'm sure you'd be okay sleeping on the streets for one night. You'll be fine. But nonetheless, Fantine becomes a prostitute, as I said. And she sings a little song, if you don't know it already, it's called I Dreamed a Dream. And it's about how Fantine's boyf and baby daddy up and left her when she was pregnant, and she was really sad about that. Understandably so. There is this dude who's also dodgy, because all the men in freaking 1800s France are all dodgy, clearly, according to this musical, apart from Jean Valjean, who's fine, I guess. And there's a customer, and he's not very nice to her in any way, shape, or form. So Fantine fights him, because she should, as she should, honestly. She's great, but she almost gets arrested by Javert, because Javert is back. He's still a policeman 8 years later, which makes sense. No longer a prison guard, though. He's now just a regular old police officer. I think he's like a kind of important police officer, but I don't quite know what his rank is in the police. But yes, so Javert is about to arrest Fantine when Jean Valjean shows up, and he's like, dude, you don't need to arrest her. She's had a bad day. Then he realizes that he's the one that fired her, and all this stuff that's happened to her in the last 6 hours or so was his fault. So Javert lets Fantine go, let Jean Valjean go, because apparently, I mean, I guess Jean Valjean had a long beard and long hair, and you didn't really know what he looked like, but Javert doesn't recognise him. So Jean Valjean takes Fantine to the hospital. After he drops Fantine off, a dude is basically trapped under a cart. And when I say a cart, I mean like a big wooden cart, which literally is probably like extremely heavy. And Valjean manages to pick it up and let him free. And this is because, as I didn't explain before, when he was in prison, they would basically have like huge ropes that would bring in ships to bay, or they would be rowing the ships. So he has a lot of upper body strength. So that is how Jean Valjean is able to save him. Even though that was 8 years ago, and he's probably lost some muscle by then. But anyway, Javert sees it, and he's like, that's a little bit strange. When Jean Valjean went missing, Javert was the one put in charge of capturing him and bringing him back. Obviously, he didn't do a very good job at that, because it's been 8 years. But that was what he was tasked at doing, and he never did. Apparently, this other dude, who supposedly looks like Jean Valjean, but I'm going to be honest, I think if you get any man with a raggedy beard and raggedy hair and a tattoo, your prob's going to be like, yeah, that kind of looks like Jean Valjean. The Jean Valjean that you knew 8 years ago, not the really posh, upper-class Jean Valjean that there is now. And he's going to get arrested and sent back to prison for Jean Valjean's crimes of running away. And Jean Valjean is like, well, if this dude gets caught, then I'm a free man. Like, I don't have to worry about running away or going back to prison, because he's been, like, moving quite a lot, just trying not to get caught by the police for 8 years, even though, why is it so deep? You probably have bigger problems, French police. But anyway, Jean Valjean sings a little song, and he's feeling real guilty. So he decides what he should do to just be kind of iconic, honestly, is run into the courtroom, go, I'm Jean Valjean, rip his shirt open, which says 24601, which was his prison number, and then run off, which honestly, iconic behavior, but also crazy. It doesn't feel ridiculous when you watch the show, but oh my god, saying it out loud, ridiculous behavior. Anyway, Jean Valjean runs off, and he goes to the hospital to see Fantine, who, like I said, this is literally the next day, is now dying. Even though prior to being fired, she showed absolutely no indication of being sick whatsoever, is now suddenly dying. Now, could this be, infection? infection or something, possibly, you know, getting your teeth pulled out probably isn't that great. However, she dreams of Cosette and is like hallucinating that she's there, and I'm pretty sure that's not a side effect of a tooth infection. But Jean Valjean is there and he vows to Fantine that he will find Cosette and he will look after her. And then Fantine dies. Princess track for real. Literally a main character for 20 minutes and then doesn't come back for a while. But yeah, so she dies in a way that I'm not really sure how, but we're just going to choose to ignore it because it's a good show, right? Somehow Javert followed him and it's like, oh, it's you at the hospital. He's come to find and take Valjean away. And Valjean's like, cool, I will do that. You're just going to have to give me like 1 to 2 working days to find Cosette and give her a nice family. And Javert's like, no, I'm not going to do that because the last time I let you go, you ran off. So sorry about that. And Javert's also like, you're not going to change. So sucks for you, but we're going back. And they have a fight in the hospital next to Fantine's dead body. And it is kind of iconic. And also we find out in this song that Javert was born in a jail. So presumably his mother, I guess, committed a crime and was in prison because that's literally one of his lyrics. And that's why I think he doesn't believe people can change, as it's my assumption that his mother obviously didn't change and then she died. So he's like, I'm from the gutter too, no one can change. Which obviously isn't true, but that's how he thinks. Jean Valjean wins, which probably shouldn't have happened, honestly, but he does win. So there, and he runs off again. Like I said, this is Jean Valjean runs away the movie. Now on the other side of town, we meet Cosette. Remember Cosette, Fantine's child? We know her, we love her. She's, I think, like 8 at this point. And she lives with the innkeeper and his wife, who are the Thénardiers. Now, the Thénardiers aren't the best people. They very much do not look after Cosette at all. And also, do you remember how Cosette was sick and dying? Yeah, she's not sick and dying. They're just twisted like that and wanted more cash. Even though they inadvertently caused Fantine's death. So they basically use Cosette as a literal 8-year-old servant, and their daughter, Eponine, is treated like the apples of their eye. She's like their golden child, and then Cosette's like whatever. Like serving wench, not worthy of their love. Also, the Thénardiers are kind of like cheats, like they charge people for money unnecessarily. I'm sure we've all been in a situation like that. But they're also our comedic relief, so we have to give them kind of like some slack because they're very entertaining to watch. But Valjean finds Cosette randomly, not at the inn, but in this random section of the woods when she's getting water. Like I also said, she's an 8-year-old in the middle of the woods, in the dark, getting water. We love safety. And anyway, the two of them go back and Jean Valjean's like, I will pay you money for this child because I want to give her a good life. And eventually they agree. And Jean Valjean goes on his merry way with Cosette, his new adopted daughter, essentially. Fun fact, we have another time jump. It is 9 years later in 1832. So it is 17 years since Jean Valjean left prison. And Paris, which is where we now are, is in upheaval because General Lamarck, who he's essentially like the government member who actually cares about the poor, is about to die. And obviously that's not very good for all the poor people. And there are loads of revolutionaries in the street, 2 of them being Marius and Andras, are besties. Now, Andras is poor, like many of these people. They're all students. Andras does not have as much money as Marius because Marius actually comes from a very, very rich family who are very anti-working class. And so Marius actually has like left his family and like all of his family's riches to go and support the revolutionary for the poor. So yay, we have a rich person who isn't a classist. Woohoo. The Thénardiers are also there and they have now lost their inn. They are very, very poor. They now run a street gang. Also, if you remember the apple of their eye, Eponine, who was treated with nice clothes and nice things, is now also very poor, as they are very poor. So she's not living too great a life, and her bestie is also Marius. So they're bestie friends, but Eponine really, really fancies Marius, like not even trying to hide it. And the fact that Marius doesn't notice is just a sheer example of how men are oblivious to everything. Anyway, we also have a little boy called Gavroche, who's a revolutionary, but he is a literal child, probably like 12, I don't know. But he's also there, and he is relevant, so that's why I mentioned him. So, because the Thénardiers run the street gang, and they're trying to swindle people, they basically have a con where they have a fake baby that is not obviously a baby, and they're like, please give us money. And it turns out that there's two people that come up to them, and they're like, give us money, please. And they're like, maybe. And it turns out to be Jean Valjean and Cosette, now grown, and they're both very rich. They're very rich people. So there's that whole double thing of how Eponine was like, oh, had all these nice things, and Cosette didn't, and now it's the other way around. Also, Cosette is really nice. Like, we learned this throughout like the show, but like Cosette is just objectively nice to everyone. Granted, she doesn't really have a personality, but she is really nice, and she's been through a lot of things. Like, her mum died, she was abused, like, her life has been horrible. She's really nice to people, so points for her, honestly. But as everyone is there, Cosette bumps into Marius, and it is love at first sight. Aww. But before long, Thénardier obviously recognises Valjean because he bought the child, and there's probably something you would remember, even if it was like 9 years ago. And then Javert comes in, and everyone's scattering and running away. It is also at this point where Javert is like, I'm gonna literally spend my entire life looking for this man and his daughter for no real reason other than the fact that he's been doing it for that long. He's kind of like, it's a bit too late to give up now. Also, before everyone leaves, Marius is like, wow, I fell in love with this girl. She's great. I have seen her face, and that's all I need. And Eponine's like, I'm right here, but okay. And Marius is like, help me find her. And Eponine's like, all right, I'll do that. That's fine. And we move on. There's this cafe, and Enjolras and a group of men, including his boyfriend, Grantaire, who's not really his boyfriend, but the Les Mis community has just kind of agreed that Enjolras and Grantaire are boyfriends. So I think that too. Anyway, they're talking, and they're like, we're gonna do this huge revolution. It's gonna be great. And everyone's like, woo. And Marius is like, that's great, but I love this girl, and that's kind of more important to me right now, even though I've never spoken to her. And all of his friends are like, haha, funny. Anyway, Gavroche comes in to this group, and he's like, General Lamarck is dead. The dude that cared about us, he's dead. He is so dead. This can't be good for us. So these revolutionaries, among other people, are like, well, time to do a revolution because he's dead and they're not going to give us anything, so we got to make them give us stuff by fighting them. And on the other side of town, at Valjean's house, Cosette really wants to see Marius, and she's like, can you tell me anything about my past, because I know nothing and I've forgotten it all because I'm traumatized. And also, why are we running away? Because you also haven't explained that, because I know literally nothing about you, even though you are my dad. And he's like, all in good time, honestly. I know you're like 17, 18 years old right now, but you'll be fine. Everything's fine. You don't need to know. We're great. Eponine has now found Valjean's house with Cosette, and she's like, grand, cool. Don't want you ask me to, Marius. And through the gate, literal Romeo and Juliet style, they're like, a heart full of love. And they think they're in love, even though, again, this is where they learn each other's names. They already claim they're in love with each other, or at least Marius does. Marius claims that he's in love with Cosette. But they learn each other's names here, and that somehow solidifies that they're meant to be together. They know what each other look like, and they know each other's names, which clearly is enough. And Eponine is like, he will never look at me like that. My life sucks. Which, yes, it does, Eponine. Yes, it does. Your life does suck, and you are strongly in the friend zone. So, sorry about that. But obviously, Eponine can't just do anything without getting noticed, and her dad is there, her dad, aka Thénardier, and his gang, because they want to rob Valjean, because he's a very, very rich man. But because Eponine is a good person, she shouts and screams, so everybody runs away. And Javert is also there, because everyone is there at all times where they need to be, apparently. And because Jean Valjean is like, I'm getting chased, everyone knows who I am, even though they actually don't, he's like, I gotta run away, and Cosette, you gotta come with me. Cosette doesn't want to go, because she loves Marius now, I guess, but it doesn't matter. And the two of them run off. And Marius really thinks about whether he's going to follow Cosette, even though they have not even known each other for 12 hours. I'm going to put it at a solid, 8 hours they've known each other. But he chooses to fight in the revolution because he's been wanting to do that for longer than 8 hours. And that is the end of Act 1. Now, this felt like a very long act when I was speaking about it. It's literally been 40 minutes according to my recording. But what a great act it is, ending with One Day More. I know I'm kind of skipping over the song songs, but that's just because, like, you know, we're talking about the plot here. That's what we're talking about. And I don't really have anything extra to add. But reading it out, I'm like, wow, the Thénardiers actually kind of caused, like, all of the problems, and there's the comedic relief. Like, they inadvertently caused Fantine's death, they abuse Cosette, they try and steal from Valjean, like, all around, just not great. It's mainly Mr. Thénardier here who I'm talking about, but I'm like, wow, like, if they just didn't exist, a lot of the plot of this show probably wouldn't happen, which is crazy because, like I said, like, it literally starts with a man in jail breaking his parole, and this is where we are so far. But anyway, Act 2, we start and there's a barricade. Woo! It's basically this one street. I think there's a couple of barricades actually, but we only see one because it's a show. And it's basically built of, like, wood and chairs and tables, anything really that they could find to build a barricade so that they can have a vantage point against the police when they eventually come and stop this revolution. Also, this revolution, I think, in real life lasted like 3 days and was wildly unsuccessful, as we will come to find out. But even in real life, like, why they decided to write a musical about this and not about the French Revolution is kind of beyond me, but I guess this works better for the plot. So anyway, they've built the barricade and Javert is there. He's on the inside now, but the students don't know that. Like, Enjolras and Marius, they just think he's this random kind of old dude that is here to help them, when obviously he's not. He wants to find Valjean and also stop this revolution because he still works for the police. And I also get that you can work for the police for 17 years, not including the 8 years prior that he worked as a prison guard and possibly also the police. But, like, calm down, mate. You know, you're way too pressed for an old man. Anyway, Eponine is also in the fight. She actually disguises herself as a man. I don't think she does a very good job at it. She literally just puts her hair in a cap and wears a long trench coat. But apparently that's enough, and that can fool people in France. So, sure, why not? But Marius wants to keep her safe because despite him not loving her romantically, he does actually care about her and wants her to be safe. So he gives her a letter and he's like, give this to Cosette, please. Do that for me. And she's like, grand, great, hashtag still in the friend zone. Now, Eponine goes to Valjean's house and is like, can you give this to Cosette? And he's like, what is it? And she's like, just give it to her. And he reads it and he finds out that Cosette and Marius are in love. And I mention this only because it's about On My Own and not because it's relevant to the plot at all. But literally, she gives this thing and then she's just strolling the streets being like, yeah, my life sucks, and she sings On My Own. Like, that song, I think, even though it is probably one of the most well-known musical theatre songs ever, has literally nothing to do with the plot, and you could totally take it out and it would make absolutely no difference whatsoever. But we go back and the French army is at the barricade and is telling all the students to surrender, aka surrender or die. But Javert tells the students, everything's fine. The government aren't going to attack us. You'll be fine. Just have a sleep and we'll figure it out in the morning. But little Gavroche, who I understand I've not really spoken too much about other than just mentioning his name, he's a smart one. He's a smart little boy. And he's like, you're not an old man. Well, you are an old man, but you were also Javert. You are Javert. He's also not American, so I don't know why I'm putting on the American accent, but let me live. So Gavroche is like, that's Javert, arrest him. And they're like, yeah, we're going to do that because you don't like us. And we know that because you tried to arrest us multiple times. So all of the students, so that's Marius, Enjolras, Grantaire, Viuli, I actually never know how to pronounce him. There's many of them, but all of them are planning to overthrow the French army and beat them. And they're idiots for that. And I will say that with like a strong belief, because not only are they like 20, but also there is like 20 of them. And the French army is obviously more than 20 people. But the French army are outside and they're like, we're gonna fight you. You know, that's what we want. And Eponine comes back and Marius is about to get shot and Eponine tanks the bullet. And then she dies in Marius's arms. Right. This is where everyone says that Eponine and Marius should have ended up together. I don't believe that. Mainly because Marius never showed any interest, and even when she was dying, he was fake pretending to love her to make her feel better for saving his life. Like, he never loved her in the way that he loves Cosette. It took him literally 5 seconds to love Cosette. And he's been friends with Eponine for like 10 years. and he's never looked at her twice. So that's why I don't think they should have ended up together, although this is one of my favourite moments of the show, because it's great. Like, we see this love duet, like this dying love duet, which you just don't see anymore, and Booble and Schomburg do it so well. It's the same in Miss Saigon with Chris and Kim when she is dying. It's heartbreaking, but it's amazing, and it just needs to be it just needs to happen more. Kill more people in musicals. I know nowadays everyone gets killed, but you got to kill them in the right way and make it a love story to make it great, like that one. But obviously, now that Eponine is dead, everyone's pretty pissed off. They're like, we didn't really think about people dying, even though that was like an expectation. So they're all like, we're gonna fight in the name of Eponine. Also, this is really random, but I remember when the song Panini by Lil Nas X came out, which was a while ago now, I always thought that it sounded like Eponine, don't you be a meanie, which are definitely not the lyrics, but that's what I always thought the lyrics were, because I couldn't understand a word that he was saying. But they're like, we're gonna fight. Not yet, but we are gonna fight at some point. And Valjean arrives and he's dressed as a soldier, so all the students are like, bro, kill him. But they realise that it's Valjean and they let him through, and it's okay. Because essentially at this point, Valjean is kind of like, I'm pretty dead at some point anyway. I'm either going to have to keep running for the rest of my life or I'm going to die. So Valjean's decision for like going there is basically because he wants to protect Marius so he can end up with Cosette and they can live happily ever after. That's why he's there, and that's his plan. If all else fails, he has to make Marius live, even if that's at the cost of his own life. That's his plan. And essentially, a soldier comes and grabs Enjolras. I know, really random, but Valjean saves him. And because he did that, Valjean's like, can I be the one to kill Javert, who you've got imprisoned over there? And Enjolras is like, sure. So Valjean goes over to Javert and is like, dude, you can go. And Javert's kind of like, what are you talking about? And Valjean's like, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to let you go. Just leave me alone, please. And Javert's like, if you let me go, I'm still going to keep hunting you and pursuing you. And in Javert's head, he's like, well, like, we're not even for you letting me go. Because in Javert's mind, he's kind of like, this is kind of like a bargain. Like, I let you free, you stop hunting me and trying to kill me. And Javert's like, I'm not going to do that. Like, you are just setting me free and I will keep trying to hunt you down. But Valjean's like, okay, cool, see ya. And he's like, I don't judge you for doing your job. Fair dues. Then they sing another song about drinking because they're like, we may die tomorrow, so let's make the most of it. And then Valjean sings his song, Bring Him Home, which I'm sure a lot of people know. And Bring Him Home is Marius. He wants to bring home Marius to save his life for Cosette. So they all go to sleep, and when they wake up, Enjolras realises that nobody else is there. They anticipated that the French people would come and help fight, but they did not get the numbers they thought they were going to, and so they're like, well, we're definitely not going to win. But Enjolras is like, nonetheless, we're going to fight, and we're all probably going to die, but I'm sure we can do it somehow. Spoiler alert, they can't. And what makes it worse is Gavroche, little Gavroche, has gone to collect ammo for the guns from the soldiers that are dead on the other side of the barricade. So there's like the French army on that side, and then Gavroche is also on that side of the barricade, and then you go over the barricade, and on the other side is the French revolutionaries and the students and stuff like that. And the French army are like, we're going to shoot this boy, and so all the students are like, Gavroche, come this side, and he's just collecting it, and he like knows what he's doing, but unfortunately knowing what you're doing is not enough to survive the shot of a gun, because one of the French army men kills him, and then everybody's judging him because obviously you just killed a child for literally no reason. And also in the film, I can't remember which character it is, I think it is Grantaire, they have this like really cute relationship, and he's like crying over the death of Gavroche, and it's really sad. But yeah, Gavroche dies, everyone's kind of judging him because they're like, you've killed a kid. But then for the French revolutionaries, they're like, well, that's it, time to die. So there is a big old fight, and it's a big fight because everyone dies. So when I mean everyone at the barricade dies, I do mean everyone. I mean Enjolras, I mean Feuilly, I mean all of the boys. All of the boys that you've seen for the last probably 45 minutes are all dead. They're all dead. They've all been killed. And Marius gets shot, and Valjean sees this and is like, I'm not doing a very good job. I'm not saving Private Ryan. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing well. So he takes him out, and they go through the sewers to hide. And I don't really know what Valjean's plan is, but he's like, well, if I stay here, I'm going to get shot. So we got to leave. And basically, they like sleep in the sewers because it's kind of gross. And Thénardier shows up again, and he steals this ring from Marius. And this actually does come into play later, so that's why I mention it. But other than that, nothing important happens in the sewer. And so Valjean carries Marius, who is still unconscious by the way, through the sewers and comes out. And like in the show, like he doesn't drag it, like he actually carries him on his shoulder. And I'm like, that must be really exhausting for whoever plays Valjean every night. But nonetheless, he leaves the sewer and guess who's there? Bloody Javert. Javert is there. What a surprise. And Valjean's like, I've had enough of this. Why did I let you go? Valjean's like, please, can you just save this guy? He's been shot and he needs a doctor and I'm not good enough to get there. Please help me. And somehow, for some wild reason, Javert agrees. He's like, okay, fine, we're gonna save this dude. And basically, this moment for Javert essentially means like Javert cannot fathom the fact that Valjean is a changed man. Like, he cannot understand that Valjean wants to save people, that he wants the best for people, that he doesn't have a grudge against Javert. Like, he just can't deal with any of that because he just cannot understand it. And it's the fact that for Javert, he has spent his entire life adhering to the law. He grew up, he has a very strong relationship with God. He has all of these things, and he basically realizes that it's kind of all like not really been worth it because he spent his entire life, instead of making himself a good man and serving a good life, even though that's what he was doing, he just spent all his time trying to find Jean Valjean, which was an unhealthy way to spend his life. And essentially he's torn between like his look for good and him wanting to bring Valjean to justice and to adhere to the law. He basically decides that he cannot deal with it, and so he jumps off a bridge and he passes away. And I will say, I don't think this has ever been that well done in any production I've seen. I think I've seen 3 versions of Les Mis, and I think the film does it the best, but I think it's because they have the most, like, they have the easiest way to do it, essentially. But in the musical, it's so dumb. They essentially attach Javert to wires, and he sings and he like goes like this and he's like this, and you're like, this looks so fake and it feels so gimmicky. Like, this is like a really important moment in the show as well, but I just think it never hits you emotionally because of the way that they do it. Like, I think it would be better if he like jumped onto a mat or something. I don't know, because the music is great and everything about it is so great, and like this moment for Javert is like huge. It's a huge moment for his character and the show, and it just never hits quite right. And I'm sorry, but that's what happens. But it's the next morning. I guess it's the same day, but it's the morning now. And all the women are like, all the men are dead, and we've just lost our boyfriends and our friends and our husbands and our lives and whatever. And they're really sad about it. And Marius is now conscious. He's okay. He's wounded, but he's alive. And he goes back to the cafe where they made all the plans and stuff, and he's having a horrible time. Obviously, he's having a horrible time because all of his friends are dead. And it's survivor's guilt for him, essentially. That's what happens for him. He's survivor's guilt. And he sings Empty Chairs, Empty Tables, which is a heartbreaking song if done correctly. And it is sad because for Marius especially, like, them dying changed nothing. Like, all these people, all of his friends died for nothing. And in the show, all of them come out and they're like ghost versions of themselves, and then they all go away, and you're like, oh, this is really sad. And Marius is very sad. But Cosette comes in because they're together now, and she reassures him that, you know, it's not his fault that he's still alive and that they didn't die for nothing, because she's nice like that. And it's at this point where Valjean basically realises that he's not needed anymore. Like, she has Marius now, and that she doesn't need, like, a caretaker anymore because she's got Marius. And Marius asks for Cosette's hand in marriage, and Valjean's like, yeah, it's fine. Valjean actually tells Marius, the first person he's ever told in 17 years, that he is an escaped convict. He tells Marius that, and this is like a whole new world for Valjean, because that's been his secret that he's held for this long. And I do find it interesting that he tells Marius first, one of only 2 people he tells, the other person being Cosette, but not yet. And I do just find that like a really interesting thing for there to be. He makes Marius promise that he will not tell Cosette his secret, and that he'll be the one to tell her at some point in his life. And we skip ahead a few months where Marius and Cosette get married. And I realise now that there is really no, like, distinction on what their age gap is. Like, I feel like it's probably okay. I don't think the age gap is very big, but I do feel like Cosette is 17, and I really hope she's not. I hope she's older than that. The Thénardiers gate crash the wedding as comedic relief. They try to steal the silver, which I think is really funny. And the Thénardiers basically go to Marius and they're like, Valjean's a murderer and we know it because we saw him carrying a corpse through the sewers. And as far as Marius is aware at this point, he has no idea how he survived the battle. Like, he knew that someone had saved him, but he didn't know who it was. And Thénardier shows him the ring, being like, this was the ring of the guy that he killed. And Marius realises that it's his ring. And so he finds out that Valjean is actually the one that saved him because he didn't know. And he was like, wow, Valjean did that for me. He's a good man. And the two of them go and to find Valjean because he's just disappeared from the wedding and they don't know where he's gone. And in some productions, Marius does punch Thénardier in the face. So I just want to mention that. But the two of them go looking for him and they find him at the convent. Now, Valjean is ready to die at this point. He is an old man because he was older when he left prison, and obviously the mortality rate in the 1800s probably wasn't that high. And Valjean's like, well, I've done everything I needed to do. Cosette's okay. She's set with you. Everything's fine. And he's ready to die. And I don't know why I suddenly feel really emotional, but some part of me does. That's really strange. Anyway, Fantine shows up. Obviously the ghost of Fantine, because she's been dead for quite some time. And Fantine tells Valjean that he is forgiven. God is okay with him because he's just been good his whole life. Like, everything he did was for the good, so he will be with God soon. Valjean thanks God to say, why do I feel so sad? I shouldn't feel sad. This is fictional, and I'm not even watching the show. Anyway, so Valjean thanks God that he gets to see Cosette again before he dies, and he gives Cosette a letter which basically explains everything about him, about how he was a criminal and how he ran away and how he was trying to keep her safe and what about mother, like all of the stuff. Like, it's what we've seen, it's what we've watched. That's what it was like. The whole first 45 minutes of the show is in this letter. And then Valjean dies. And it's real sad. Everyone's really sad about it. The ghosts of Fantine and Eponine guide him. Why the ghost of Eponine guides him, I don't actually know, because I don't think they knew each other at all, other than two very brief accounts. In the film, it's the ghost of the priest, which I actually think makes a lot more sense. But we're not here to judge, because Valjean has just passed away. Obviously, Cosette's really upset, because her dad's just died. And everyone who was dead, which is pretty much everyone apart from the Thénardiers and Marius and Cosette, everybody dies in Les Mis. They're all on stage. And they sing Do You Hear the People Sing Again, which they sang earlier, as Valjean goes to heaven. And that is the end of the show. And I can't believe that I've been speaking about this for over an hour. Jeez. Anyway, that is the plot of Les Misérables. Saying it out loud, I realise now how crazy it is. And how ridiculous it is, but in the best way. Les Mis is still in my top 10 musicals, so even if you hear me slating it, I still think it's great. I would love to be in it. Love that. That would be so fun. So any people around who are sticking to the end of this video, I'm here. I'll do it. You know me. Got me French book. Could probably learn it in French. I learned I Dreamed a Dream in French once. That was hard. And I am sure there are differences in the Victor Hugo novel than there are to the musical. I was not here to talk about that. I was here to talk about the plot. And hopefully it was entertaining for you. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy long form content, but I never really film it because I never really have the time, and I don't know if people like it, but I want to make it work because I like it, which means I hope that you like it too. I do think that's all I have to say. So, thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, you can like it and subscribe down below if you feel like you don't have to, but if you did, that would be great for me. Please leave comments down below on what you think of this video, of Les Mis, anything and all things Les Mis. Keep enjoying musicals as much as me, and I will see you in the next one.